It's Monday, January 21st, Tuesday, January 22nd, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We welcome you nightly on the SOR Radio Network, Deep Talk Radio, Revolution Radio. Good to have you with us. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot. Head to our website, shop at our store right now, pick yourself up a t-shirt and more. Read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Head to our website, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe today. The word magic is used profusely throughout history, magic from tricks to the magic of miracles. Many feel magic doesn't exist. That's why it's a very quick sleight of hand that the human eyes just cannot pick up. Others believe magic is a form of witchcraft, while some marvel at the religious aspect of the experience. Tonight, looking into magic, consciousness, parapsychology, is Dr. Dean Radin. Dean is chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, otherwise known as IONS, and Associated Distinguished Professor of Integral and Transpersonal Psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. So what is magic? Let's look into it tonight as Dr. Radin has penned 3 books, including Real Magic, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to the Secret Powers of the Universe. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, we have Olaf Phillips coming back for another edition of the SOR Newswire. Dr. Dean Radin, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Great to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to have someone of your stature on this show because I think when it comes to parapsychology, consciousness, magic, and all of this, what a lot of people deem as folklore, it's good to have someone of your stature to come on in here and actually look into it from a scientific point of view. What attracted you to this field?
Well, all you need to do is go to the movies or watch the TV, and you'll see about half of the movies and half of television have themes associated with magic or with psychic phenomena. So it's a perennial aspect of our entertainment. And so who's interested in this? Well, obviously, Hollywood and fiction writers are well aware that basically everyone is interested in these concepts. So it would be surprising if you were to meet somebody who wasn't interested in magic. The only difference here is that if you begin to study the nature of magic, whether it's performance magic like on a stage, or whether it's stories or mythology, a little piece of your mind is starting to wonder, I wonder if this stuff is actually real. That at least is how it occurred to me. I'd read a lot of science fiction as a kid, and I always wondered then, after finishing a story that was thrilling, I wonder if any of that is real. And that was really the beginning for me. It was a matter of curiosity, and being scientifically oriented, I decided to see if there was any science at all within the notion of real magic. And as it turns out, there is.
Well, that's very interesting in regards to that. Now, for someone of your stature, what tends to happen with a lot of people is your fellow colleagues tend to look at things and say, are you crazy here, boss? Like, why are you wasting your time on something like this? Did you get that from a lot of your colleagues?
Publicly within science, you think about science, it's not monolithic. There are thousands of disciplines and tens of thousands of professional journals and 15,000 institutions of higher learning around the world. So that's when we say mainstream science, we're talking about that. If you ask a scientist to say in public if they're interested in psychic phenomena or in real magic, they're almost obligated to say no, because it is considered to be ancient, superstitious ideas, and it's okay to talk about magic or or psychic phenomena as belief. People believe in these things, but it's dismissed as coincidence and all of the usual mundane explanations. But if you talk to them after 3 or 4 beers in private, they're going to start telling you stories of things that have happened to them. And the majority of scientists and engineers will admit that they've had an experience, at least one, that they actually cannot explain other than being something like psychic or magic. It's also important to realize that the term magic, meaning real magic, that we're talking about, is really a placeholder name for something that we don't have a better name for yet. It's talking about some relationship of consciousness to the way that the physical world works. So I use the word magic because people think that they understand what it is, even though actually nobody does. But it is an entree into thinking in more detail about the nature of consciousness. And almost everybody I've ever met, including most of my scientific colleagues, including ones who will proudly proclaim themselves as skeptics, if you talk to them long enough, they'll start telling you interesting, strange experiences that they've had, which tell us something about the nature of consciousness, which they will not admit in public.
When you look at the study of magic, most people look at magicians, David Copperfield, people like that, Penn and Teller, Chris Angel, so on and so forth. There is something about magic that, has always really intrigued people, the sleight of hand, how did they do that type factor. What is the difference between staged magic, much like that, and magic of, say, a spiritual or a parapsychological level?
Well, stage magic is all about illusions. It takes advantage of frailties in perception and psychology, and it's thrilling to watch. I have a large collection of books about magic and also a pretty extensive collection of magic tricks. I've done that partially for professional reasons because sometimes people will come to the lab and say, I can do all of these interesting psychic things, and I can see very quickly that they're using tricks. And so they're trying to fake it. And if you understand the nature of how performance magic works, then you can spot somebody who's faking it pretty quickly. At the super professional level of magicians, they fool each other all the time. So unless somebody who's a real professional at magic, you can spot them. If they're a true professional, you may not be able to spot them. And that's one of the reasons why if somebody's showing me something spontaneously without explaining in advance what they're going to do, all I can say is, well, that was an interesting performance. But I'm certainly not going to say it's psychic. The only way we know that for sure is to do it under controlled conditions in the laboratory where I know in advance everything that's going to happen. Then we can have some confidence that it's real. So the performance magic is an important part of the history of magic because people forever have been interested in these things, and as a result, there's always been motivation to create a fake version of it. And this is one of the reasons why psychic phenomena also, you have a lot of people who make a living faking that they're psychic. And this, of course, gives the whole realm a bad name because some people will then say, well, all of it's fake. Well, that's not true. There are people who will fake in every domain of human affairs, including psychic phenomena and magic. But, of course, that doesn't mean it's all fake. And I study the real stuff, not the fake stuff.
So in your mind, in your definition of what magic is, what would that be? So the common person who only understands magic as illusion, what would it be, the definition?
Right. So the way to define it is that technology is to science as magic is to the esoteric worldview. I'll state it a slightly different way. Technologies, that we're using a technology right now, we have cell phones, we have all these fancy pieces of equipment, they're based ultimately on a certain type of worldview, the scientific worldview. It's based on materialism, the way the physical world works. So technology is an application of that. Magic is an application of a different kind of worldview. It's the worldview that we call esoteric. The difference then between a performance magic, which is an illusion, and real magic is that real magic has a different way of thinking about the nature of consciousness. That's really what it's about. And it falls into three different categories, three types of practices that are associated with consciousness. One is called divination. So divination is the reading of tea leaves and looking at a crystal ball and all of that, the I Ching and so on. It's a way of perceiving through space and time as a practice. The second practice is called, sometimes called manifestation or called force of will, which is the idea that your intention or your consciousness can directly affect the nature of the physical world. The third practice is called theurgy. It's a Greek word that ultimately means God work, and it's referring to the idea that there are spirits and that we can communicate with spirits and sometimes get them to do things on our behalf. So divination, force of will, and theurgy are the practices that collectively is what we call magic, real magic.
Do you buy into it? Do you buy the entire consciousness aspect that goes along with it? Because consciousness over the last year is really starting to build a lot of steam. And I think a lot of people out there who are skeptical of the notion will say that it really, Dean, is not a big player. It's just another type of BS that the radicals of this parapsychology field, whether it's paranormal, UFOs, or whatever, are trying to do or bring in to pull the wool over people's eyes for real knowledge and real science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at the what is actually known about the nature of consciousness, most people will turn first to the neurosciences, since the standard Western scientific worldview says that everything's made out of matter, including mind. So our mind, from a neuroscience perspective, the mind, consciousness, everything having to do with cognition and perception and so on, are created by the activity of the brain. That's the conventional approach. And if it wasn't for phenomena of parapsychology, it would be very difficult to argue against that view, because clearly there's a relationship between the activity of the brain and consciousness, meaning awareness, because if you do something to the brain, you scoop out bits of it, and people lose their awareness. And so there's the relationship. The question is whether the brain creates consciousness or whether consciousness was there first and the brain could be thought of as like a very fancy radio tuner. Somehow it was receiving consciousness. So you have to turn then to a skeptic who would say, well, consciousness is sort of an ephemeral idea that can be used to explain anything. The counter to that is that the only thing that any individual ever knows, the only thing that they can know, is because they are aware. And this is the aspect of consciousness that remains one of the major mysteries within science today, and is recognized as such. You look at a journal like Science, which is one of the top journals, and it has a list of the outstanding unsolved problems in science, and one of the top ones is, what is the nature of consciousness? Where does it come from? What's it good for? What is it? So parapsychology is the scientific discipline that listens to experiences that people report, things like telepathy and precognition and so on, figures out ways of testing those ideas in the laboratory under controlled conditions so that you can rule out mundane explanations. You rule out coincidence, and you rule out that it's fake or that it was some kind of a cue or something of that sort. And when enough of these experiments are conducted, you're able to make a scientific evaluation of the nature of the evidence. So when I say that I now believe in real magic, my belief is not based on some prior expectation about stories that I've read or from religious perspectives. It's based entirely on looking at the accumulated data of over 100 years now from many, many studies. That data, using the same criteria that we use to evaluate other kinds of phenomena in the natural world, is very strong at this point. It's strong enough so that the president of the American Statistical Association, which, after all, statistics is the discipline that evaluates data, and the American Statistical Association is one of the largest such organizations in the world and very, very dead center mainstream. She says now, this was in 2016, it was Jessica Utz who was the president, she said during her presidential address that she's looked at phenomena like remote viewing and precognition and a few other phenomena in terms of the experimental evidence, and the evidence is as strong as anything else that we know in science. So and that's why I'm saying then that the reason I wrote the book on real magic is to say, yeah, there is actual scientific evidence that is repeatable, independently studyable, has been produced over many, many decades, and the phenomena are real. What's missing then is an explanation that you can say to any other scientist, and they will immediately say, "Oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand how it works." We don't have that yet. There are theories that people have, but we don't have a theory that every scientist will listen to and eventually say, "Okay, I get it." So the lack of the theory is actually, from my perspective, the lack of the theory at this point is the only reason why psychic phenomena has not become part of mainstream science. But the moment it does, and I think we will see theories coming along that will be persuasive, the moment that we have persuasive theories, the connection to the historical idea about magic will become completely obvious. And that, of course, is the whole point of my book, Real Magic, is to present why I think that what I just said is true.
So many questions for you already, but I'm going to stick with the consciousness aspect here. There are a lot of people, including Grant Cameron, who will be on this show in 2 nights' time, who are looking into the entire UFO aspect, saying that UFO groups, especially if they're involved with government agencies, are really high on this consciousness aspect, because a lot of people who say they have been abducted or had contact and been taken up into ships believe there is some sort of consciousness that actually flies that craft. Do you look into that area of consciousness as well, and whether or not that's believable?
Well, I've paid close attention to ufology over many years. It is not something that I study because as a laboratory scientist, I'm primarily interested in things that I can personally test in the laboratory. And most, maybe all UFO sightings and reports are either subjective, or if they're not subjective, in cases where there's video taken, for example, it's spontaneous. And that's interesting because all kinds of things are spontaneous, but it means you can't bring it into the laboratory and do things on your schedule or under your conditions. That makes it very, very difficult to gain confidence in learning what is going on. So I stick with phenomena like telepathy or precognition, where we can produce it basically in the lab when we want to, and at that point then you can gain better and better confidence about the nature of the phenomena because you don't have to wait around for something interesting to happen. As to whether consciousness is related to the UFO phenomena, I think clearly the answer is yes. That practically all of the reports that go back to the beginning, and I know Jacques Vallée, and I'm well aware of the idea that UFOs are not a modern phenomenon. They go back all the way through history. There's something like things that fly in the sky that have been around us since the beginning, that almost all of them have something to do with the nature of perception and awareness. So yes, they have something to do with consciousness. The idea of that consciousness is now a topic that people talk about is relatively new. 30 years ago, nobody was studying consciousness. Maybe an anesthesiologist was interested in it, but it was not part of the story in the academic world. Scientists simply weren't studying it at all. Now it's becoming more and more important in many different disciplines. So it may be tempting to think of consciousness as now a hot topic, but as I said before, if you think about what you know and anything that you can know, it all devolves back into the fact that you have awareness. So the awareness element of consciousness is really the grand mystery. We don't know why or how we can be aware.
Do you think that has to do with the fact, as we got about 2 minutes here before we got to go to break, that maybe go back 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, whatever it may be, that our brains were actually more in tune with real magic because there wasn't the distractions out there of television, radio, internet, cell phones, and so on and so forth? Has technology ruined that level of consciousness?
I don't think it's ruined it, but it has certainly become a major distraction. I was in the airport the other day, and I would say almost 100% of everyone was looking at their smartphone. And so you no longer have the opportunity of just sitting. I happen to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and just looking out of the window in the airport, you see these fantastic mountains, something which is beautiful to look at, but everybody's looking at their phone. Well, that's happening at a larger scale around the entire world now, and it is the disconnect with our place in the world. We've dived into a digital world which is virtual, not the real one. And yeah,
how do we combat that, though?
Well, first by becoming aware of it. So I've made a practice that if I'm in a place where I'm waiting for something, and airports are a good place to do that, I'll check my email every so often, but then I set it down and start looking around. And that's, over the last couple of years, I've noticed that it's really kind of shocking that almost every single person, whatever their age, is inside a digital world. They're in it somehow, doing something. Well, I'm sure that they're all having fun doing that, but on the other hand, they're missing out the experience of just being as well. So, yeah, so being aware of the fact that this is happening is the first stage. The second one is to, in a sense, to just be reacquainted with the fact that we have the ability to pay attention to something else, to the rest of the world.
On that note, Dean, I'm going to get you to take a little rest here because we're going to go to our first break of the night. Dr. Dean Radin is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Real magic is the topic we are talking about. We will get into more about telepathy, precognition, consciousness. Let's see where this goes. Your questions coming in hour number 2 as well, so prepare them. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Pleasure to have you with us on this Monday night, early Tuesday morning, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Tonight we are talking magic, real magic. We're going to get into the science behind it all, as our guest tonight is Dr. Dean Radin. He is a chief scientist at Institute of Noetic Sciences, otherwise known as IONS. He's also got a book out that you can get on Amazon called Real Magic, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to the Secret Power of the Universe. And we bring Dean back on. Dr. Radin, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
Thanks very much.
Right before the break, we were talking about consciousness, and I asked you a question in regards to our brains. And with the distractions that we have in everyday life, we're not really probably paying attention as much as we should be in regards to what is actually going on around us and around the universe. How do we, outside of getting rid of our smartphones and doing everything that we find blasphemous these days, how do we tap back in your opinion, to our other side, our enlightened self that has always been there and been there throughout history with mankind?
It's actually quite easy. At least it's easy to describe. It's not so easy to do. And the answer is to meditate. You sit down and close your eyes and turn off your mind. So it sounds, well, you don't have to do anything. You just turn your mind off. Well, of course, if you haven't meditated before, you sit down, you close your eyes, you turn off your mind, and about 2 seconds later, you're dreaming of cheeseburgers. It's very, very difficult to get what they call the monkey mind, the chattering that goes on inside your head, to slow that down and eventually stop it. But historically, meditation is the safest and most sure way of eventually developing one's psychic abilities, because these abilities don't drop out of the sky. It's simply that there's an aspect of our awareness or our consciousness that is mostly associated with the brain and the body, but not all of it. It's actually bigger than that. There's aspects of our awareness that transcend space and time. And it's because of that transcendent quality, which is inherent in anyone who has any awareness at all, probably not even just humans, but anything that exists is, in some respects, local. It's an object, like a rock is an object, but it also has aspects that are not quite in space and time. And up until the development of quantum mechanics, what I just said would have been ridiculous, because from a Newtonian physics point of view, what we call classical physics, all there were objects. They're material objects, and they all appear to be completely separate, and they're certainly not separated in space and time. But after Einstein and especially after quantum mechanics, we now know, and this is very mainstream physics today, we know that there are aspects of reality which are not in space and they're not in time, and yet they're a part of reality. Well, it turns out that our awareness also is mostly localized, but not all of it. Some of it is also outside of space and time. And I think that's where most, maybe all, of what we think of as psychic phenomena or as magical events, these are things that are not taking place in the everyday physical universe. They're taking place outside of it in some way. And I wish I had better ways of talking about what I mean by outside of space and time, but we begin to run into problems with language. We were so used to thinking of time as a thing and space as a thing that our everyday language doesn't work very well. the moment we start talking about things that are not exactly in time, but beyond it, and things that are not in space, but beyond that too. But that is the larger reality that we live in.
Do you believe through scientific study that the consciousness behind psychic phenomena is real? Because a lot of people out there believe that it's just a bunch of charlatans trying to, take advantage or swindle people out of money. A lot of people believe that there is some sort of phenomena that just cannot be explained properly within the human realm. But is there true scientific study to prove that there are people walking this planet that have the ability to be mediums or look into the future or read someone?
Well, it isn't. It's probably not the case that there are individuals who are like X-Men who are completely different than the rest of the humans. From our studies and those of our colleagues around the world for a very long time, we generally will use volunteers who don't make psychic claims, typically college sophomores, because they're available and they're ready to do experiments. So most of the experiments that are done looking at psychic phenomena do not involve people who say that they're psychic. They're just ordinary people. But they're asked to do a task that would require them to have some psychic ability in order for the task to work. So I'll give you an example to help make this more concrete. So let's say people are always talking about something we might call telephone telepathy. And so this is the case where you haven't thought about a friend for 20 years, and suddenly they come to mind for some reason you don't understand, and then you get a phone call from them. And so this doesn't seem to be coincidence, because, as I said, it's someone you hadn't thought about or communicated with for 20 years, and now they're calling you after you thought about them. Well, it's actually quite a common experience. So that's just one example of what we might think of as telepathy, that the other person's awareness of you or wish to get in contact with you, you somehow received, even though you had no prior reason to do so. So the challenge then, from a scientific perspective, is how do we study that and figure out what it is? And so the first question is it possible for one person's mind to interact directly with another person's mind, regardless of where the two people are? And so this has been studied in many different ways. Probably the most direct way of thinking about it is you get two people who want to do the experiment. You call one the sender, the other the receiver. So the sender is going to try to send mentally information to the receiver, and the receiver will report it, and then we can evaluate the results. So what you don't want to do is to select two people who are very friendly with each other and spend a lot of time with each other, to come in the lab and just ask one to just think of something, and then we'll see if your friend can think of that too. And the reason that doesn't work very well, even though actually you get very good results in that kind of experiment, is imagine that the two friends had just been out on the ocean sailing all day, and now they come into the laboratory, and you ask one of them, think of anything you can think of. Well, they're probably going to start thinking of the ocean and sailing and the sun and all that, because that was their experience. Well, the friend had exactly the same experience, so it wouldn't be surprising if they started reporting exactly the same thing. So in this case, because of their shared knowledge, what might look like telepathy clearly isn't. Then it's about shared memory. So what you do instead is, first of all, you isolate the two people in the experiment so there's no ordinary way that they can communicate. So you do this by shielding and by distance. So the distance is such that there's no way they can send messages between each other in any ordinary way. And the shielding is to block things like they have a cell phone in their pocket and they're somehow sending messages by cell phone. Or there's a confederate. Maybe they have a friend who's going to pass messages between them. You plug all of these possible loopholes so there's no way that one person can communicate with the other. Once you've created that context, then you have a pool of pictures that you've prepared in advance, and neither the sender or receiver know what those photographs are. You randomly select one of those pictures. You give it to the sender, and the instructions for the sender is to look at this photograph and send the content of this picture to your friend at a distance. So this could mean if you're, say, looking at a picture of a moose. So you send everything you can think about a moose to your friend. Now, meanwhile, your friend is secured somewhere else at a distance. They know what the name of the game is. They know that there's a sender sending them something. And so they're asked in one form of the experiment to simply speak aloud, anything that comes to mind. And they're in a relaxed chair and just in a kind of a reverie state to spontaneously think about anything that comes to mind. And so in some experiments, in order to help the sender send the information correctly, anything that the receiver says aloud is carried by a one-way audio link to the sender. So the sender is thinking moose, 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 and they can now hear what is in the mind, because the receiver is speaking aloud. They can hear what the receiver is receiving. So if they're thinking the word moose is not working, well, they can try a different strategy. They'll think of a large brown animal, for example. And then maybe the receiver will start thinking in the right direction. So after about a half an hour's worth of this kind of sending period, the receiver is say, okay, the sending period is over. We're going to show you 4 pictures. One of them is what the sender was trying to send to you, and there are 3 decoys, 3 different pictures, and they're selected at random. So by chance, the best that the receiver could do is select the correct picture 1 in 4 times. Because if telepathy doesn't exist, that's all they can do. It's just one of the 4. If there is telepathy, it might give them a clue, a mental clue, to select the picture of the moose more than the other pictures. And these 4 pictures are selected so that they're all as different from each other as possible. So you don't have a moose and a caribou, for example. You'd have a moose and maybe a crystal rock and a sailing ship and so on. Very different kinds of images. So the experiment I just described has been conducted as if that was one session. Then if the receiver correctly selects the moose picture, because that was the impression they were getting, that would be called a hit, like hitting the target. Otherwise, it's a miss. So the hit rate in this experiment is 25%. That's chance expectation. So over 4,000 sessions of this type have been conducted by over 20 laboratories around the world for about the last 50 years, mostly using college sophomores or the equivalent. Sometimes using close friends, sometimes using family members and so on, but mostly just ordinary people who don't claim any special telepathic rapport. And the overall hit rate is 32%. So the 32% hit rate, where 25% is expected by chance, it doesn't sound all that impressive. It's only 7% more than chance. But because there are 4,000 sessions that have been conducted, you can calculate the odds against chance of ending up with 32% rather than 25%. And the answer is many quadrillions to 1 against chance. So we're talking about trillions upon trillions upon trillions to 1 in terms of that happening by chance. So we have extremely strong evidence at this point that when you ask people to do the experiment as I described it, that it is not a chance effect, that people are getting some kind of a clue that helps them select the target way more often than you would expect by chance. So that's how we gain confidence that something like real telepathy actually exists.
What is happening to the brain as we are trying to figure this out? Does the brain kind of go into a different level of thinking or action in order to try and figure this out, what the other person is saying, or does it automatically try and find its own history and past, in order to try and find those answers?
Well, there's 2 ways of answering that. One is that there are other kinds of telepathy experiments which have looked specifically at brain activity during these kinds of effects. So a colleague of mine in Washington State has done experiments where you put the sender at a distance and you put the receiver inside a functional MRI machine. So the functional MRI is able to visualize blood flow and use of oxygen in the brain, the whole brain. So you get a picture, an ongoing video, basically, of all of the blood flow in the brain, and then by telling where the oxygen is being taken up, you get a sense of what the activity of the brain is happening all throughout the entire brain. So the protocol of this experiment is the receiver is in the functional MRI. If you think about an MRI, these are these tubes that you get inside, very heavy magnetic shielding because you have a very strong magnet as part of the MRI. It makes a racket when it's running, these banging noises when the magnet's being pulsed. And so it's magnetically, electromagnetically, and acoustically shielded, and you're inside this metal tube. So there, the receiver is really isolated from the rest of the world. Meanwhile, a different part of usually a hospital where this is taking place, the sender is sitting in front of a computer screen that either is flashing like a checkerboard pattern where the white and black squares are flipping back and forth quickly. So that produces, when you're looking at a screen like that, this flickering checkerboard, it produces a huge effect in the occipital lobe of the brain, the portion of the back of your brain that responds to visual imagery. And it really pushes it. So you're getting a lot of activity in the back of the brain. And the other condition is that you're looking at a static checkerboard. So if you're looking at just a checkerboard pattern on the screen, it'll also activate the occipital lobe, but nowhere near as much as when it's flickering. So those are the two conditions that the sender is in, and they're not trying to send anything. They're just looking at this picture while keeping their friend in mind. So now we go back to the receiver and say, well, what's happening in the receiver's brain when the sender is seeing a flickering checkerboard pattern as compared to a static one? And the answer is that when the sender is seeing a flickering checkerboard pattern, the occipital lobe of the receiver lights up. It becomes more active. What's very interesting about this is not only that the receiver's brain is responding, but it's responding in the portion of the brain that is the same portion as the sender, because the sender's occipital lobe is lighting up, and that is what is lighting up within the receiver as well. And what this tells us is that that telepathy seems to be a synchrony or mimicking of one brain's activity into another person's brain. So you're seeing a correlation in the actual activity of the brain. The same kind of experiment has been done a couple of dozen times using an electroencephalograph, which looks at the electrical activity of the brain. And with a similar kind of idea, that you stimulate one person, you can see what happens in their brain electrically, and you see if something like that is occurring in the receiving party. And the answer is yes. In most cases, that happens. So this doesn't answer your question about what is the state. Like, what state is the state? What is the brain state that is most likely to receive the telepathic impression? All I've just described so far is a way of at least beginning to show that brains can become correlated at a distance. So as far as the state goes, there have been experiments that have been comparing what we might think of as an ordinary state, your everyday waking state, as compared to altered states of consciousness through meditation, through taking psychedelic drugs, through drumming, through dancing, all kinds of alternative states of consciousness. And those studies are very clear. The ordinary state of awareness is not the state you want to be in to be psychic. All of the action is taking place in these altered states of consciousness. And I think the reason why this is the case is because if you think from an evolutionary point of view, that our bodies and our brains and even our awareness have been shaped by a couple of 100 million years so that when we're active in the world and doing our everyday ordinary thing, we are very tightly aware of our local surrounding. We're aware of right now and right here and things around us. Because if we weren't aware of that, the tiger would have eaten us, and we would not have had progeny, and we would be dead. And we would have not passed along the genes that allow us to simply walk around paying attention to everything else other than what's right in front of us. So all of us are the result of being shaped by evolution to pay very close attention to here and now. And the only time that kind of attention begins to drop is when we're dreaming, or we've taken a drug, or we're meditating. or a few other states, all of which are not ordinary states of awareness. And
we only got about... Sorry, go ahead.
And that's when where we see psychic effects starting to happen.
We only got about 90 seconds before we got to go to break here at the top of the hour. When we are looking into that type of intuition, whether it's telepathy, psychic ability, or whatever it could be, is there, or let's take it just for telepathy for a moment here. Do you say that you have people who are getting some sort of brain-to-brain type function and communication? How does that exactly work in regards to, like if I'm thinking dog and all of a sudden you're in California, I'm in British Columbia, and you start thinking dog at the same time, a lot of people would say that's just coincidental thinking.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so in any given experiment, it might be a coincidence. But that's why we do many, many repeated experiments. So if it turns out that on average that the two people are thinking about the same thing, then it's no longer coincidence. It's through this repetition and lots of trials where you're able to discriminate between pure chance, like dumb luck, versus an actual effect. And the statistics of the experiments is what gives you that confidence.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing. We're going to get more into telepathy in hour number 2, and I know the questions are lining up for Dr. Dean Radin, so I'm going to get you guys to all hold on in the chat rooms right now. I will get to your questions. Just do me a favor, whether you're in a chat room or on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, put your question in capital letters because I do not want to miss it. Our guest tonight on the show, Dr. Dean Radin. He is talking real magic tonight. He is a chief scientist of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and you can go to Amazon, pick up his books, the one we're dealing with tonight, Real Magic, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to Secret Power of the Universe. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio right after this. Looking for the stories of the strange and weird that you will find hard to find anywhere else? Check out the SOR Newswire on our website. Our writers, led by Captain Shirk, are scouring the world for the oddest and most bizarre stories we can find. Everything from weird crime to suspenseful and paranormal. We're working hard for you to bring you the most intriguing news of your day. Check out the SOR Newswire at spacedoutradio.com today.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is watching.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Linda Godfrey joins us to talk about the monsters among us. We get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, Deep Talk Radio, Revolution Radio. Love having all of you guys on board. And if you want to check out our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor and hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Ostraconophobia. Ostraconophobia is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot. You can go shopping right now at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. Tonight we are talking with Dr. Dean Radin. He is one of the leading scientists in the field of consciousness, in the field of telepathy. He is a chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and he's got a great book out. You can find it on Amazon right now. Real Magic, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to the Secret Power of the Universe. Dr. Radin, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio for the second hour.
Thanks very much.
I always like to get the audience involved when we go into hour number 2 here. So if you don't mind answering some audience questions, that would be absolutely wonderful.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's start off with Andrew. Andrew is saying, what about black magic, voodoo, and hoodoo, and curses? He says, I know some people believe in them and some people think it's just a figment of imagination. What is your sense on those?
Well, black magic is the application of magical principles or magical practice in such a way that it overcomes another person's free will. That's like a short definition of it. So any kind of, and in fact, most of the applications of magic are about magic spells, and most magic spells have to do with the use of power. So power over others, to gain money, to gain sex, to gain favors of various types. And all of that is black magic because it's attempting to influence somebody else and override their free will. Even in an orthodox way of thinking about this, even attempting to use magic to heal somebody at a distance, like prayer for healing somebody at a distance, that is also black magic, because unless you get the other person's permission to try to heal them from a distance, then you're interfering with them. So magic historically is very seductive because we're always trying to get something, and people always seem to get in the way. So magic has gotten a bad rap, basically, because it is oftentimes used in a way that is trying to interfere with others. So by contrast, the white magic is one where you do gain the permission of others, and you're doing things in a beneficial way. And then there's also a huge gray area. There's a kind of magic which is called binding spells. In a binding spell, you attempt to influence somebody else so that to prevent harm. So that if there's, for example, there are a lot of ceremonial magicians in the United States who have put binding spells on Donald Trump, the president, because they want to prevent Trump or his administration from doing things that might hurt others. So that's a binding spell. So it's a slippery slope because it's black magic in the sense that it's influencing another, but it's white magic in the sense that its intent is to be beneficial for everyone. And that's where there are long discussions about how far do you go when you use these techniques to try to influence the world and other people.
Does it have that much of effect, and can it affect just everyday general society, much like what you just used, your example with the binding spell on Donald Trump and his administration?
Right. So the question is, does it work? Right? You have a lot of people praying in one direction or another direction. My guess is that in most cases, very strong intention by one or more people actually does have an effect. It's usually a very small effect, but there is an effect of it. The thing is, though, that anytime you have something that is controversial, whether it's a president or some kind of event in the world, if you're able to add up the total number of intentions pushing in one direction or pushing in the other, they tend to cancel each other out. Very similar, for example, to something like watching the World Cup soccer game, where you might have 1 billion people watching the game, but 500 million are hoping one team wins, and the other 500 million hopes the other team wins. And so any small effects that are adding up as a result of all of these intentions tend to wash out. And this is among other reasons why, in ceremonial magic terms, the spells that are cast or the force of will that is used is kept secret. Secrecy is a very important part of any kind of magical practice, so that you don't have interfering intentions in the mix. Because as soon as you do, it starts to dilute the whole process.
What about the people out there who claim that they are witches or spellcasters? Do they have any influence on actually creating magical spells and having them work? Can anybody do this?
Well, yes, anybody can do it, but just as there are some people who get to the Olympics and other people who don't, some people are very talented in these domains. So we should probably keep in mind that people who call themselves witches or follow the Wicca religion or pagan religions, most of this is about what amounts to nature religions, or the idea that we're part of nature and we should care for and essentially worship nature itself. That's what a lot of the magic is. It's about nature and the natural world. There are, of course, some who may be called a witch or a warlock or ceremonial magician who are specifically engaged in practices, either divination or force of will or theurgy. These are all ancient practices that go way, way back, all the way to shamanism. And some of them are talented, and some of them can produce bigger effects than others, yeah.
Let's get to Gail's question in regards to magic. She says, how does someone overpower another person's free will?
Well, if somebody has extremely strong intent and they're using magical practices, most of which involve going into altered states of consciousness, it depends on what it is that you want somebody else to do. So one of the largest categories of magical spells are ones having to do with love, romance, and sex. So somebody is interested in somebody else, and they want the other person to fall in love with them, say, or at least to become attracted to them. Well, maybe the other person is not so interested. Well, if the magical spell is strong enough and the person doing the spell is talented enough, it could actually influence their behavior in such a way that now they're noticing that person, whereas before they wouldn't have noticed them. So how do we know that is actually even possible? Because what we're talking about is something like a Jedi mind trick, right? These are not the droids you're thinking about. So in the laboratory, what you do, I've done studies both of voodoo methods, but there's a more an easier way of doing this kind of experiment, which is to ask whether or not one person's intention can affect another person's behavior. So in the laboratory, you ask a person to go into a room and to look at a candle flame. And every time they notice that their attention has wandered away from looking at the candle flame, they press a button. And this is an easy way of measuring their fluctuations in attention. Meanwhile, outside the room at various times, you ask somebody to typically look at a one-way closed-circuit video image of the person in the room with the candle. So when they see that snap up on the video screen, the instruction then is that the person outside the room will stare at the person on the inside and attempt either to deflect their attention or to help them concentrate. So this experiment is called remote facilitation of attention. You're trying to help the person attend, or you're trying to distract their attention. Very similar to the Jedi mind trick. So that experiment has been done. And the experiment shows that, indeed, to a small extent, an average person looking at another person and trying to either get them distracted or focus their attention can do it. It's generally these experiments, as I said, these are not people who claim that they're magicians or anything. They're just volunteers. Given that we know that this works with average people, it is very likely that if you were to find the Olympians on both sides of this equation, Olympians meaning especially talented people who can influence, and also especially talented people who are very sensitive to these influences, then you would find relatively big effects. So is it possible in principle? Well, we say, yeah, from these controlled experiments, which have been repeated, they show small effects, but they're real effects.
Intriguing.
That's how you influence somebody at a distance.
Let's get to Bill's question. He is asking, what are your thoughts, Dr. Radin, on radionics that set frequency for change manifestation? Can it create psychic phenomena?
Well, radionics, a way of thinking about it is that you create a symbol of the thing that you're trying to influence. So the symbol might simply be on paper. It's like a drawing of the thing you're trying to influence. That's a portion of radionics. Sometimes there are machines that are associated with the distant thing you're trying to influence. And it's actually very, very close to ideas in magic, because one of the main principles in magic is called the law of correspondence, that a symbol of something is very similar, is not just similar to, but in a sense it is the distant thing. So as an example, if we see a creature out there that looks fuzzy and it purrs if you pet it, we will call it a cat. Well, the word cat is a symbol for that animal. In addition, if we put on a piece of paper the letter CAT, that's a slightly more abstract symbol for the cat. But if we look at it, we look at CAT, we immediately think of not as a symbol, but we think, oh, this is the cat. Nevertheless, in radionics, you create a symbol of the thing that you're trying to influence, and so your attention or your intention is focused by use of the symbol to affect the thing itself. It's classic magic, basically. So radionics tends to get heavily into the mechanics of the machine, but the machine, again, is simply a symbol. Like sometimes you can buy machines that have all kinds of fancy electronics in them, and there's frequencies you have to tune and so on. None of that is actually necessary. What's necessary is that you believe it'll work, because belief is a part of this as well, but the machine becomes a symbol for focusing one's attention. So the question is, does it work? Well, there haven't been that many controlled experiments using radionics techniques, but there have been plenty of experiments in the laboratory where it's not called radionics, but it's still looking at whether or not intention can push around the physical world, and those experiments suggest to a very strong degree that the answer is yes. Your intention does push the world around to a very, very small degree, unless you're very talented, but that's quite rare.
Let's move on to another question here. This one comes from Sharon in Arkansas, and she is asking, when you wish ill intentions on someone, like saying, I hate this person, or I want someone to die, isn't this like magic or manifestation?
That is exactly black magic, yes. The use of intention to cause harm or to override somebody else's free will. That's black magic. Yeah.
How often is that successful, though? How often is that successful, though?
Well, remember that the effects for ordinary people, and we're talking ordinary, I mean the vast majority of people, the effects are real, but they're very, very small. So you might say you might think about somebody, you hate somebody passionately, And so maybe they feel a slight headache, or maybe they feel a little bit agitated or something like that. But that's about as far as it's going to go. Because the moment you begin to pick something up like a feeling like that, well, people will take an aspirin, or they'll just assume that it's because they had a bad trip to the office or something. So we're all of us are being buffeted by these kinds of intentions to others all the time. For most people, it makes no difference at all. It's partially because most people are not trained to produce these kinds of intentions, or to focus for very long periods of time, or to do it in states of awareness that are much stronger than others. So the effects, fortunately, for all of us, these are not big effects. They're real, but they're not gigantic. There are many stories that have been written about the consequences if huge magic were suddenly unleashed upon the world. Like suddenly all of your whims get turned into reality. All of the stories about the genies in the bottle and so on, they all end badly. Because if you're not in very strong control of your whims and wishes, you will destroy yourself and everyone else very quickly. You can just imagine that if you're driving on the highway and people are getting agitated that you're not driving very well, and you multiply that by 7 billion people driving, we will destroy ourselves magically in a matter of one day. And so the effects we're talking about, fortunately, for most people, most of the time, are really, really small. But they're real.
Let's get back to telepathy here, and we'll take more questions as they come through. In regards to telepathy, where you have some sort of mind communication going on with another person, a creature, maybe a dog, cat, whatever it may be, how do we know it's not our imagination making up these thoughts of the words that are coming back, whether it's sentences, whether it's pictures, as you mentioned in the first hour, the psychic moose? You know, I think that's part of the confusion that a lot of people have who do not believe that telepathy is real, that it's just our imaginations playing with us, seeing what we want to see.
Well, most of the time it is imagination. Again, the effects are small enough, so it's very difficult in the everyday world, through everyday experience, to actually tell the difference. So I know some people who are very talented psychics. They have learned through their own experience that they can discriminate between their own thoughts and impressions that they get from others. It's extremely rare, even for very talented people, to gain thoughts. It's much more likely that you gain feelings, you gain impressions about things that are quite vague. And psychics that are highly talented, after a while they begin to learn their own internal sense of images that might be a fleeting image of something that they say, oh, okay, I know what that means. It means this. They've learned their own dictionary, in a sense, that this feeling means such and such, and it's not mine, it's from somebody else. But that takes a lot of talent and a lot of practice to figure it out. So one of the things I get oftentimes from people is that they are disturbed because they're getting what they feel is intruding thoughts. Like there's like somebody's talking in their head and telling them things. Well, the very first thing I say to somebody like that is you have to see a psychiatrist, because that is a sign of schizophrenia. You might be on the verge of a psychotic break. And so you need to be evaluated by a professional who can tell the difference between the idea that somebody's inserting thoughts into your head versus it actually is coming from somewhere else. So if you go to a classically trained psychiatrist and you start telling them things like this, you will be diagnosed as being mentally ill, even though the person might be psychic, right? The patient might be psychic, and they're actually really picking up impressions from other people, but that is not part of standard medical diagnosis at this point. So it's conceivable, at least in principle. So I've been asked occasionally to be an expert witness in trials where somebody insists that they know that they're completely normal, and yet they're getting these impressions from somebody. And what I always say is you have to get a trained and licensed psychiatrist who can be open to the idea of telepathic impressions. I mean, they don't have to dismiss it, but they must be a trained professional in order to evaluate whether it is a serious mental problem or whether it might actually be psychic. And there are psychiatrists who are sympathetic to genuine psychic phenomena. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't do that stuff. I study it in the laboratory.
What if it's your higher self or your higher consciousness that's trying to contact you? Or a lot of people talk to their angels or guides.
Right. So my usual way of responding to that is if the messages that you're getting are beneficial, they're helping you, well, then it doesn't matter where it comes from. Maybe it's your higher self, maybe it's an angel, it could be, who knows. If it's helping you in some way and not harming others, then fine. Go with it. We can't tell based on personal experience where it comes from, typically. On the other hand, if voices are telling you to harm yourself or to harm other people, you need to get medical attention real fast. Because even if it was coming from a bad angel, you still you're in harm's way, or you're putting somebody else in harm's way, and that requires help, psychological help or psychiatric help.
We got about 90 seconds here before we have to go to break. In order to have some sort of telepathic communication or connection, do you have to be emotionally connected to the person? Maybe it's a best friend, maybe it's a pet.
You don't have to be, but it helps. And the reason why I think it helps is because it's much easier to focus on a loved one or a friend than it is on a stranger. And a lot of this has to do with the degree of focus. Think of it like a very narrow laser beam focus on someone you love is relatively easy to do because you can image them, you know them emotionally, and so on. A stranger is much more difficult to do that. So it's not necessary, but it does help.
Interesting. Is that because you know them so well that you almost know, like, you know, we always hear those things where couples just get together and they're finishing each other's sentences, so to speak?
Right. So some of that is going to be shared knowledge, right? You spend a lot of time with somebody else. You share a lot of memory and knowledge, and that alone can account for what seems like a telepathic connection. Where it becomes more interesting is two people are a long-term bonded pair, and something happens to one unexpectedly, and the other one's at a distance, and they somehow know it. Well, then it's much more likely to be a telepathic connection. And the reason is that both people have a little piece of their attention always on the other person. It might be unconscious, but if you're with somebody and you love them, they become part of your awareness. So a little piece of your awareness is always connecting with the other person.
Dean, I'm going to get you to hold on here. We're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Dr. Dean Radin is our guest tonight. We're going to get into precognition coming up in the next half hour on Spaced Out Radio, so stay tuned.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger and Dave Scott, the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
We've passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Linda Godfrey is back. But before we get to her, we're going to Dean Radin, or Dr. Dean Radin, pardon me, as we are continuing on our conversation about magic, telepathy. Does it exist? Does it not? Dr. Radin, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
Thanks, Dave.
We wanted to get into precognition in this hour because there's a lot of people out there who claim they have had precognitive dreams about disasters, about, family situations, about getting jobs, losing jobs, whatever it may be. It is something that I think everybody has had happen at least once in their life that they just truly can't explain. To you, in your research, what you've done, what do you think precognitive dreaming is all about?
Well, it seems as though we have the capacity to perceive through space and time. So that perceiving through space, sometimes we'll call clairvoyance or remote viewing, it's seeing something at a distance. Seeing through time is perceiving the future, or it might also be perceiving the past, like the far past. There are stories, for example, where somebody will visit a historical place and they'll see people in period costumes. And then later they'll say, oh, wasn't that great that the people were dressed in these period costumes? And they'll say, what are you talking about? There wasn't anybody dressed in period costumes. Everyone's dressed in modern costumes. And they say, well, I saw something. Well, so that's like a retrocognitive or a retroactive form of perception through time. So the question that always arises then is, well, again, how do we know, is this a real thing or are people just making it up or fantasy? So one of the ways of testing for precognition in the lab is that you, one thing we see again and again with all of these psychic phenomena is that they seem to bubble up from the unconscious. This is one of the reasons why the ordinary state of awareness, the everyday state of awareness, is not very good for psychic awareness. But from the unconscious state or deep consciousness that you can begin to touch upon when you do things like meditation, that's where the action is. So one of the ways of detecting that information without asking somebody to try to bring it to their own awareness is to monitor what's going on inside the body. And the reason is that we know that your unconscious is reflected by what's happening in your heartbeat and the amount of sweat you have and the size of the pupil in your eye and so on. So the reason why a lie detector works, and it's measuring heart rate and breathing rate and so on, it works because you could try to consciously prevent somebody. You can tell a falsehood, and outwardly it doesn't look like you said a lie, but your physiology will reveal that you are lying, unless you're completely a sociopath and don't care one way or the other. But if you're a normal person and you're doing some effort to hide the fact that you're lying, you'll immediately see that there's a change in breathing or change in skin conductance or heart rate and so on. So we use the same technique in the laboratory where we wire somebody up to look at heart rate and pupil dilation and skin conductance and so on. and we sit them down in front of a computer screen. We ask them to press a button, and 5 seconds after the button is pressed, suddenly a picture shows up. The picture is selected from a very large pool of pictures, some of which are very calm, like a tree or an ashtray or something, or they're very emotional. So they might be emotional in the positive direction. It might be a smiling baby. It might be an erotic picture, or it might be very emotional in a negative way, like a picture of a car accident or surgery or something like that. So you have these two major categories, calm and emotional pictures. Nobody knows in advance what picture you're going to see on each trial of this experiment because they're selected at random. And not only are they selected at random, they're selected immediately before they're actually shown by a true random process. So let me make a distinction here between true randomness and pseudo-randomness. So you can program a computer through algorithms to select something at random, but it's not really random. It's called pseudo-random because it's an algorithm that's doing the selection. A true random process is using something like radioactive decay timing or noise in electronic circuits or something like that. It's real noise from the world, which is unpredictable. So you use a true random process to select a calm or emotional picture at random from a very large pool of pictures so that nobody knows in advance. Not the experimenter doesn't know, you as the subject don't know, up until the moment that the picture actually appears. And since we've been measuring your physiology continuously, we know a lot about how people respond physiologically after seeing a picture. There's thousands of articles written about that, lots of experiments. We know, for example, that if you're looking at a picture that's very emotional, that your heart rate will decelerate, your pupil size will dilate, your eyes will dilate, your skin conductance will go up. All of these things are well understood. These are flight or fight responses that show up in your physiology. What we're interested in this experiment, though, is what happens from the moment that you press the button during the 5 seconds when a picture has not been selected yet, but it will then be shown. So you press the button, 5 seconds goes by, and now you either see an emotional or a calm picture. If we have unconscious precognition, or somehow that future emotional response ripples backwards in time, and from the moment you press the button, if you're going to see a calm picture, then your physiology should remain calm. If you press the button and you're going to see an emotional picture, well, then your physiology should start becoming emotional. That's what this experiment is checking to see if that's true. So there have been many experiments, about 36 independently reported experiments looking at this kind of phenomenon, and that's exactly what you see. That before an emotional picture, people start to become more emotional. Before a calm picture, they remain calm. And the aspects of the body that have been looked at include the heart and the eye, skin conductance, their brain responses, many different aspects of physiology, all of which are unconscious. So this is a very nice experiment because one of the problems with doing an experiment of this type is that if you bring somebody into the lab, whether they claim that they're psychic or not, you're asking them to do a miracle on demand. I want you to be precognitive exactly in the way that I want you to right now. Just do it. It's difficult because most of these skills are not, they're not consciously available to us. I mean, a very talented psychic can do it, but it's rare. Most average people can't be psychic on demand because they don't even know how they're doing it in the first place. So this experiment doesn't ask them to be psychic. Just ask them to sit down. We're going to wire you up, and they'll look at a bunch of pictures. So the experiment works quite well. The nice thing about this experiment also is that the design of the experiment has already been done many, many times, thousands of times, in a discipline called psychophysiology, which is the study of how the body responds to different kinds of stimuli. So after we were doing these experiments for a while, somebody got the bright idea of saying, well, we're doing experiments that are almost exactly like what's being done in the academic world all the time. So let's see if we can find an experiment that uses the same design, continuous recording of physiology, before, during, and after seeing emotional or calm pictures, and then look at the data from that experiment to see if this precognition effect shows up in the data. So we did that. We found experiments that were done only to look at what happened after seeing a picture. And instead, because we had the data, we looked at what happened before the picture showed up. And sure enough, we found the effect there as well. So what this means is we all have a certain degree of precognitive ability all the time. It even showed up in experiments that weren't even looking for it, and it still showed up. So this has become a more popular way of doing experiments now, where we don't rely on conscious responses. Instead, we figure out ways of either using physiology or behavioral responses. We hide the fact in an experiment that we're actually looking at a psychic effect, and the results that we get are much more robust in those experiments because we're not asking people to do a miracle on demand.
Where do the clairs come into play? Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, are they a part of this as well?
Well, all of those names are referring to perception through space or time. The way that the perception is felt can be different in different people. So somebody who tends to see things in the future is clairvoyance, clear seeing. Other people might get it as a feeling or as a smell or as a touch even. So people have different natural affinities for different kinds of sensory ways of perceiving the world. And if they're getting information from the future or perceiving something at a distance, then their favored method of perceiving, that's the one that's going to show up. That's what all of those different names are about, how it is perceived.
Interesting. Carl has a question here, and he is asking, why do some people need to try to prove or disprove something which many of us know to be true?
Well, so I'm interested in studying these kinds of phenomena for two reasons. One is that after gaining confidence from the experiments that they're real, because after all, a lot of it is not real. A lot of the times that people talk about these phenomena, they're either faking it or they're delusional. So we want to know, can we gain confidence that it is really real? It's not just coincidence. So I've done many experiments of this type. I'm convinced that, sometimes this is real psychic phenomena. And we have high scientific confidence that that's the case. Second reason, though, is that this tells us that there's something that is missing from our scientific understanding of who and what we are. And that becomes really important. So to put this simply, if we take the current scientific way of understanding reality, it's everything in reality, including who and what we are. The scientific worldview is called materialism, which, as I said before, it means it's a doctrine that says everything is made out of matter and energy, everything, including mind, including consciousness. And it's why in the neurosciences, one of the dogmas essentially is that everything you think you are, your beliefs, your loves, your wishes, everything is completely due to the activity of your brain. End of story. That's it. So among other things, when you die, your brain stops. That's the end of it. There's nothing else. Because consciousness from that view was basically a kind of an illusion. It was created by this activity of the brain. That's all it is. That's what science says today. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not so true. So one of the ways of questioning whether that worldview, that way of understanding ourselves and reality, is by looking at psychic phenomena because they don't fit the materialistic model. The moment that you say that there's something strange about consciousness that seems to transcend the usual limits of space and time, that is really difficult to understand from a materialistic perspective. Maybe someday we'll understand it better. Maybe it has something to do with the strangeness of quantum mechanics. But at least of right now, it's a very strong challenge to the prevailing ideas about the relationship between the brain, the mind, and consciousness. And so this is more than simply an academic a question of academic interest, civilization, the way civilization works, is very strongly influenced by what science tells us about the nature of reality. So if, in fact, we are essentially machines, we are meat machines, machines made out of meat, which is what the neurosciences tell us, we will treat each other like machines. Machines don't care about meaning. They don't care. They're not compassionate. They're just mechanical objects. If you look around the world, the way that many people are treated, the way the governments treat individuals, in many cases, is as though we are machines made out of meat. Well, if that worldview is wrong, we're not machines made out of meat, we had better learn it real quick, because otherwise, what are we doing here? We're killing ourselves. If it turns out, for example, that consciousness is really fundamental, it's more fundamental, perhaps, even than matter and energy, then that radically changes our notion of who and what we are. It changes our notion of life and death. Changes our notion of, do we have purpose or not? So, well, these are all the big questions that people ask at some point in their life. And this, in parapsychology, then, is one of the very few disciplines within science that is trying to ask in a deeper way, using science, what in the world are we? What are we capable of? And as I said, it's not just an academic interest. It actually has to do with the way that we treat each other and the way that civilization works.
Eugene has a question in the chat room for you, and he is saying, Dr. Radin, have you ever had any psi experiences throughout your academic life?
Well, many, yes. So most of them are, one way to respond to this is that an experiment is a formalized type of experience, right? Experience and experiment come from the same root term. It's all about either spontaneous experience or a formalized experience. So when I do an experiment in the laboratory, and I get a result in the experiment, I have an experience. The experience is I just had to have high confidence that we just saw a psychic effect in the lab. So I've seen this many, many times. So many that I'm not exactly blasé about it, but I'm no longer so interested in the idea of whether these phenomena are real. I'm way more interested in figuring out how they work. But, of course, spontaneously, I've had lots of psychic experiences as well, but only after I started doing this kind of research. When I think back in my childhood, up through college, I can't remember any experience that I had which I would say was psychic. That was not the reason why I started doing this kind of research. I got involved in this mainly out of curiosity. Just wondered, could any of this actually be real? And that's what got me interested.
What have you been able to prove or disprove in the phenomena that you have studied so far? Or what do you feel we should be looking into a little bit more on a grandiose scale?
Well, in science, we don't talk about proof. We talk about evidence and the strength of evidence. Proof only exists in alcohol and in logic and mathematics. So what I can say then is that after you do an experiment for a while and you see that your colleagues can replicate it and it starts to get more and more replications, you get a sense of how it works, then you can say, well, now I believe it, but the belief really is based on the evidence, the data. It's not prior belief. So I forgot the rest of your question.
Well, do you feel you're close on having the data available that can say, yes, telepathy is something that we should be, practicing in our daily lives or something along those lines?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit like the so what question. After you get past the point of agreeing that, yeah, the phenomenon is real, well, so what? What do you do with it? And then it goes back to this notion of, well, maybe we can figure out a better sense of what are we capable of, which is associated then with the notion of what is our actual potential? What is human potential? Well, we don't actually know what we're capable of at this point. But these kinds of phenomena suggest that we're capable of a whole lot more than we're taught in our textbooks, and we know very, very little about it. So that's, from a scientific perspective, this is, holy smoke, this is a topic which is begging for additional research to figure out how in the world is it possible that we can know future events? How is that possible? It tells us something about the nature of reality and our role in reality. So in the short term, probably the most application for all of this is in health and healing. There are a lot of people who do psychic healing or energy healing, and they're called lots of different terms. Some of that seems to work. We have no idea how it works. Well, it'd probably be a really good idea if we figured out how professional healers who seem to have a good track record, what are they doing that, and typically doing it just mentally, how can that affect somebody at a distance or even close to them to heal them? Well, that now is challenging not only something about our mind, but the mind-body connection that it would be very useful to know. So maybe we don't need to have surgery or take a pharmaceutical drug. We need to do some kind of energetic or informational medicine thing that today we don't actually understand very well, except that there's evidence that some people are quite good at that. As for the other things, we're talking much further out. Like the whole enterprise of science essentially is trying to figure out the nature of reality. So that can sound abstract to people. It doesn't immediately answer the so what question. But as we've seen again and again through the history of science, that science is probing the edge of the unknown. We begin to understand more and more about it. And eventually somebody figures out that portions of the unknown are actually useful. In fact, that's the whole history of science and technology, is getting curious about something, starting to understand it a little bit better. Somebody gets an idea of how to use it, it becomes a technology, and we advance from there. So,
Dr. Radin, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, my friend, as we got a lot more audience questions coming up right after the break. Dr. Dean Radin is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to get into your questions, talk about parapsychology, and a little bit more in the final half hour with Dr. Radin right after this.
Come hang out with Spaced Out Radio, where we own the night. This is Carl. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to chat with us live. On Instagram, at Dave Scott SOR. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. SOR archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. Come join us, or I will come join you. See you at your window.
At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow night on the program, Linda Godfrey is back. Yes, we're talking Dogman, Sasquatch, all sorts of monsters, starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hi to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, Deep Talk Radio, over on Revolution Radio as well. Don't forget you can check our archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. They are free for you. All I ask for in return is hit that subscribe button. Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Ostraconophobia. Ostraconophobia is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, pick up your plethora t-shirt in our Spaced Out Radio store right now, and you can read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Dr. Dean Radin. He is the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and he's got a great book out, a number of books actually on Amazon, but we're talking about real magic, ancient wisdom, modern science, and a guide to the secret power of the universe. Dr. Radin, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Please inform us on what ions is all about.
The Institute of Noetic Sciences. So first of all, noetic is talking about deep inner knowing. It's knowing without knowing how you know, like intuition. And it's a kind of knowing where when you know something, you're absolutely certain that it's correct, and usually it is. So it's a very strong sense of intuition. So our institute was started in 1973 by Edgar Mitchell, who is a Navy captain and astronaut who was on Apollo 14 to the moon, and he was the sixth man to step on the moon. When he was coming back from the moon to the Earth, he had a full-blown mystical experience. The way he described it is that the space capsule coming back was slowly rotating, so the sun wouldn't cook one side of it. It kept a uniform temperature by rotating. So he was looking out the window, and he would see the Earth, and then he'd see the moon, and then he would see the stars, and it just repeated again and again, slowly. And every time he saw the Earth, you could imagine, marveled at this bright blue ball in the blackness of space. And the stars, of course, are incredibly brilliant. And he was thinking about, from space, you don't see any boundaries or countries on the Earth. You see a blue ball. And you can see the continents, but there's no indication that there's nations or anything like that. And he thought it was such a pity that there's so much strife happening, political strife and so on, among the people on Earth, given how beautiful it is from space, and also how fragile it is. The atmosphere around the Earth is very, very thin from the point of view of looking at it from space. So we're surrounded by this very thin atmospheric bubble on this fragile planet in the middle of nowhere in space. And so as he was contemplating this, he began to get a very strong feeling about the nature of life on Earth, and then it expanded out. And it kept expanding, the sense of a kind of palpable unity of life everywhere in the entire universe. And during the experience, of course, it was a basic mystical experience. It was afterwards where he was really marveling at the fact that he felt what people have described throughout history as a mystical experience, a kind of samadhi, as it would be said in Hindu tradition. So when he came back to Earth, he was so moved by that experience that as a trained scientist and test pilot and Navy captain, what he knew was the power of science and technology. That's what got him to the moon and back. And he was determined then to use those same tools, the tools and techniques of science and technology, to try to understand that experience that he had, which is a common, relatively common human experience of unity with everything. And it's transformative. When you have that kind of experience, you're not the same person after you have it. You now feel very differently about humanity and other people. So he started our institute with the idea of looking as best as we could, using the tools of science, at mystical and psychic experience to try to figure out was that simply a hallucination that he had, or was it real? And if it's real, how can we understand it better? How do we study it to understand the nature of ourselves and the universe in a better way? So that was the origin of IONS, and we're going strong. We're heading towards our 50th anniversary in a couple of years. We initially, years ago, were funding other people who were doing things along these lines. So we were funding psychic research a little bit, did some of the initial funding for meditation research, for people interested in studying the role of gratefulness and unconditional love, things of that sort, and mind-body medicine, long before they became mainstream. Today, over the past 20 years or so since I've been at IONS, we also created an in-house program to do research. So I was brought on to start a laboratory. And since then, now we have a group of 10 scientists. All are interested in these noetic topics. And we're doing a broad range of projects, all looking at this issue of what are our capacities, what is the nature of consciousness, and how does it interact with the physical world.
Intriguing. Very intriguing. With that, I want to get to some audience questions here because they're piling up profusely here. And Gail is asking, Dr. Radin, do you discount then divine healing?
Well, I don't discount it. What I would question is, what do we mean by divine? Because if by divine we mean a spiritual entity or God or something of that sort, which is outside of the natural world, literally supernatural, then the science has nothing to say about it. It doesn't say it's not real, but it's not studyable. So we're limited by the methods of science, which we're dealing with the natural world. If something is proposed to take place from outside the natural world, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, but there's nothing we can say about it.
All right, let's move on here. Let's go to Lisa's question. She is saying, Dr. Radin, how many, in your mind, divisions of consciousness are there?
Well, that's a very good question. Just yesterday I saw a lecture on this. The person talking gave 9 different layers or 9 different hierarchies of consciousness. So there's everyday conscious, I can't remember all 9, but I'll give you the sense of it. Everyday conscious awareness, like everyday, the everyday world or level of awareness. Then there's pre-conscious processing that happens in the brain. Like we know, for example, that when you see something, that it has probably already arrived about 500 milliseconds before you're aware of it. It takes that long for the brain and the nervous system to process the information. So there's pre-conscious processing, there's subconscious processing, the unconscious, and then deeper layers that are reached through meditation, maybe all the way down at the bottom to be something like a universal consciousness that people in very deep states of meditation can achieve. And those are will be very similar to what I was describing before as a mystical state, a sense of unity with all consciousnesses everywhere. So there's many different layers involved, most of which our ordinary waking sense is what we think of as being aware, but when you begin to meditate or even do biofeedback or neurofeedback methods, you begin to sense that there's actually a spectrum of awareness or a spectrum of consciousness. And we mostly live in just in the tippy top of that spectrum.
One of the scientists who actually listens to this show is, we call him Uncle Dale around here, and he's got a great mustache, so that's why we love him around here. He is asking, Dr. Radin, why do you think that consciousness is not made out of some kind of energy that we do not yet understand? That would avoid ditching materialism.
Mm-hmm. He may be right. If there's an energy that we don't yet understand, then by definition, we don't know what that is. So it could be some sort of energetic state. I mean, people talk about scalar waves and non-Hertzian waves and so on. Maybe it has something to do with that. And by the same token, a similar question I get sometimes is, what do I think about spirituality? Like, what's the relationship between science and spiritual? And my response there is that we don't actually know what spiritual is. It's mostly described in terms of how people feel. They feel a sense of transcendence or larger than themselves, or that they can perceive or feel themselves through space and time, or mystical states. Well, all of that might be material too. After all, our understanding of the nature of matter and energy has significantly changed over the past century. It very likely will continue to significantly change. So it could be that in some future time, what we call spiritual will be understood as a subtle form of energy. And today, of course, people do talk about subtle energies, but nobody has any idea what that actually means at this point. So if we get to some future science where we do understand better, like consciousness is some kind of energetic something, it will be very different than the nature of materialism as we currently think of it. Materialism today is constrained to a large extent to the four known forces in physics, and even a kind of constrained view of the nature of electromagnetism, because the Maxwell's equations, which are used to are best models of electromagnetism, unless you want to go to quantum electromagnetic dynamics, which is even more sophisticated, a case can be made that our understanding of electromagnetism today is descriptive, as all of our physical laws are just descriptions, our best models and descriptions, some of which are really good, but those descriptions don't tell us ultimately what they are. So every so often I'll ask a friend of mine who's a physicist, well, tell me again exactly what is a photon? What is it? No, it's a packet of energy. It's a chunk of electromagnetism. But what is it? Like, how did this arise out of a Big Bang? You know, where did it come from? From the photon's perspective, there's no time because it's moving at the speed of light. When you really start to dive into the understanding of fundamental forces in physics, we have really good descriptions of them so far, but we don't actually know what they are fundamentally. So science, in my perspective, is very, very young. It's only a few hundred years old, and humans like us have been around for probably a couple 100,000 years. So science is at the very beginning stages.
Let's go back to Gail here. She is asking, Dr. Radin, if I can do something like remote viewing, what difference does it make if neuroscience understands me or not? It doesn't change what I can do.
That's correct. Gail is completely correct. There are all kinds of things that science doesn't know how to explain yet. That doesn't mean it's not real. Up until relatively recently, people were using aspirin for hundreds of years, and we had no idea how it worked. That doesn't stop us from not using it, or from using it. So this, again, is similar to what I just said, that science is young. If you look at the range of things that science begins to understand, we have pretty good models, and we know that the models are correct because we can make technologies that are reliable. And now you compare that little pile against another pile of things that are on the edge of science that we don't understand. and now you compare the two piles. The piles of things that we don't understand is much, much, much larger than the pile of things that we do understand. I mean, the ratio between the two, some people would say, well, we make a fraction. We'll put everything that we think we understand on the top of the fraction, everything that's left over to understand is on the bottom. Some people will say, well, that number is very close to 1. Like we're really, really good. We get about the same amount that we know versus don't know. Whereas I think that fraction is actually so close to 0, it might as well be 0. What we actually understand about the universe, in other words, is such a tiny fraction of what is yet to learn or learnable that we essentially know nothing. Obviously, we know a little bit because we have computers, so we must learn something. But in the grand scheme of what was knowable, we know very, very little.
All right, let's move on as we try to jump into as many questions as we can from our audience right now. Joseph is asking, Dr. Radin, do you have any opinions about specific meditation techniques or schools?
Well, I've tried many techniques over the years, and I do Vipassana. So Vipassana in the modern era is called mindfulness meditation. Vipassana is, you can trace it back to Buddhism as the source of the technique. But mindfulness is now very popular. It's taught and studied in many, many places. Essentially is to sit down, relax, and to allow yourself to watch your breath, and then to allow thoughts to just go. Don't grasp onto anything. So for me, that works after trying many different methods like concentration meditation and mantra meditation, movement meditation, and so on. So my recommendation for people is to try many different methods. Find one that you resonate with and then do that. Because otherwise, if you find yourself struggling to, for example, to do a mantra-type meditation, then you're not going to do it, and it's not going to be very useful. So try lots of different types. Another approach now is to use something like the device called Muse, which is a very simple but quite good neurofeedback system. It's a little thing you wear that measures your brain waves and gives you immediate feedback through audio, and like through your smartphone. And for some people, that works really well, because now you're learning to meditate, but you're getting immediate feedback about what is the actual state of the brain at the time. So it's a little advertisement for Muse, which, by the way, is a Canadian company. And then other approaches are guided meditations. The Monroe Institute has a series of methods using binaural beats. Some people like that. I once went to a workshop at the Monroe Institute where they use that. You listen to these binaural beat things for 14 hours a day for 6 days in a row, and you really become altered. This is, by the way, even if you go to a meditation retreat, you do 10 or 12 hours of meditation a day, with no other things that you have to do, you're just meditating, you become very significantly altered by the end of that time, to a degree that if you haven't done it before, you would almost not believe. So the story about the Monroe Institute experience was that we were warned to not drive home ourselves after the retreat because we would be so altered we may have an accident. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, sure. So the retreat was over. I was driving home, and then I came to a traffic light, and it was red, so I stopped. And then it turned green, and I was so struck by the beauty of the green light that I forgot what I was supposed to do. I was just sitting there in the car. The car behind me started beeping, and I didn't know what to do because I thought the green looked so beautiful. And it was because I was in this very altered state of awareness. And so from that point to getting home, I have no memory at all. I know I got home. I don't know how I drove the car, I suppose, but I don't remember getting there. So it's true that it doesn't take that much. I mean, that was a week-long exercise, but some techniques, in that case it was listening to binaural beats or meditation or whatever, you can really significantly push yourself into other states of awareness.
We got about 3 minutes left. I want to try and get one, maybe two more questions, and this one comes from Trip, who is asking, or let's start with Catherine, pardon me, what's your opinion on déjà vu?
Déjà vu, feeling of having seen or experienced something before. It's one of a whole bunch of déjas. There's a kind of déjà vu in which you feel that you've never been. You've gone to some place that you know you've been before, but you have the feeling that you've never been there. That's a kind of déjà vu. So what we don't know is, are these tricks of memory, which is possible, or are they precognitions, which is possible? The bottom line is we don't actually know how to explain them. But they're fairly common. Most people have had one or more déjà vus. They're fun, I think, when they happen.
All right, let's get to Tripp's question here. Dr. Radin, do you think the white light or the end of the tunnel that people see at the end of their life is just our eyes losing energy?
It's conceivable. It could be that the brain is shutting down and it's a portion of the hallucinations that people see. On the other hand, people see a very similar light, somewhat similar light, during some kinds of meditation. I've experienced that myself, where you get into a meditation of what feels like a very bright light, but it doesn't, so bright that if it was an actual light, it would hurt your eyes. But it's not an actual light. It's something else which feels like light, it looks like light, very bright, but it's in a meditative state, and it has a quality to it similar to the near-death experience where it feels really, really good. It feels comforting in some way, and that you want more of it. So we don't know yet at this point what that light is.
Wonderful. We're into our final minute with you tonight, Dr. Radin, and I want to say a heartfelt thank you for you coming on the show tonight. I would love to be able to do this again. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get to all of our audience questions from you, or pardon me, for you in regards to tonight's subject. I would love to be able to do this again with you in the future as well. Could you let our audience know where they can find your books, your theses, your studies, and how they can get in touch with you just in case?
Sure. Go to realmagicbook.com, and you'll find many of my published journal articles. You'll find a list of events of things that is like talks and other things that I've done, presentations. You'll also find a contact form, so if you didn't get an answer to your question, you can send me an email, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. realmagicbook.com.
Wonderful. Dr. Radin, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Very much appreciate your time. You're a wealth of knowledge that I would love to tap into for our audience once again, and I look forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Dean Radin. We're going to have him on again, for sure. Coming up next on the Mighty SOR, we got Paranoia Magazine's Olaf Phillips coming on for the SOR Newswire, so stay tuned.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live 7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStream App Store.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night. Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose, Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on the mighty SOR. And we end the night with the man, the myth, the paranoia legend, Mr. Olaf Phillips. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every single show. We want to talk about the weird, the wacky, the WTF in the world that surrounds us. Mr. Olaf Phillips from Paranoia Magazine, how are you, buddy?
Greetings and salutations.
Greetings and salutations to you as well. You had an exciting weekend, taking your boys to a legendary castle over the weekend?
I did. I went to Hearst Castle.
How was that, man?
Insane. Just
really?
Insane. Oh, yeah. They're around the Roman pool. It's surrounded by these tiles that are inlaid with 24-karat gold. They have like 24-karat gold, like griffins and stuff, like inlaid into the ground. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Crazy.
Wow. Your boys have a good time?
Yeah, a lot of playing on the beach. A lot of playing
Lots
on
of
the
sharks.
beach.
Lots of sharks.
We didn't see any sharks, but then we went to San Luis Obispo, hung out for a little while. Yeah, it was good.
Nice. I had a kickback weekend, man. Chill, relax. Nothing ever exciting happens at SOR headquarters. So, it was typical. Absolutely typical. But we're glad to have you back on the show tonight. Obviously, we get to the news, the weird, the wacky, the strange, that just cannot be understood by the majority of us. What do you got for us tonight, my friend?
Moose chases skiers at Colorado resort.
That doesn't surprise me.
Breckenridge, Colorado, a woman, in an effort to warn others of the dangers of moose, posted a video on social media of a moose charging skiers and snowboarders at the ski resort. The Summit Daily News reports Lauren Drogsvold captured video Saturday at Breckenridge Ski Resort. The video shows a large bull moose approach and then charge a crowd of people. There were no reports of injuries. Resort CEO John Bueller recently said the staff tries to prevent guests from approaching the highly territorial herbivores, which are generally peaceful but can turn aggressive when they feel threatened. Colorado Parks and Wildlife spokesman Mike Poras said the agency has jurisdiction over the moose. He says wildlife officers are the only law enforcement personnel that can decide when to tranquilize and move a moose. So moose is charging skiers.
That sounds so Canadian. That sounds so my area.
No, Colorado.
You know what? It's kind of weird because up here, the minute there is a moose along the highway or something along those lines, everybody stops their cars and wants to take a picture of them because they're actually very elusive creatures. They're tough to see.
They are.
And you know, I know Bazooka Joe from the chat room that many people know around here. He and I were driving along along this forest road, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, yeah, well, there's a moose. And then you see it ducking off into the trees, and it was in maybe 15 feet, and no longer could you see it. It's just that camouflage. But, I mean, they're big, man. You don't want to mess with a moose. You don't want to mess with them.
No, you don't.
They are dangerous.
No, you don't.
Very dangerous animals.
When they get angry. Oh, yeah.
Oh, big time, man. Big time. I don't know why people, you know, I understand people have it's not something that you see every day. It's not something that, you know, if you have the opportunity to get that photograph or whatever, people are going to take it, so on and so forth. But
sure,
I find it always comical that there's always this stupidity that comes along with wild animals. Like, people tend to think they're like pets.
They think they're harmless, and I think that's the danger.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, up here, there was a video in the fall here of these tourists that were driving. They stopped their vehicle, and they were feeding a grizzly bear Timbits from Tim Hortons. And you're like...
Oh, you mean donut holes?
No, Timbits.
Donut holes.
Timbits. We're not going to do this tonight. We're not going to do this tonight. All right.
There's more. There's more stuff. There's more stuff. We got news, man.
All right, let's get to it.
Friends use couch to skate across Minnesota Lake. Some adventurous friends in Minnesota took a ride on a couch across a smooth ice covering a lake. The filmer, he and his friends were on an ice skating trip to Excelsior Bay in Wayzata Bay on Lake Minnetonka when they came across a man using a tractor to do donuts on the ice. The filmer said he used his golf cart to join the man for some stunts before they decided to try towing a couch across the ice with some friends on the top. We came across this guy doing donuts with his farm tractor on the ice, so I joined him with my golf cart and proceeded to visit with him at his fish house, the filmer wrote. He had a couch located by the front door. Without a pause from one of my friends, John asked if he could ride the couch across the smooth ice. He said yes, and the rest is history.
Oh, good stuff.
Fun in Minnesota.
Yeah, you got to be doing that stuff. You know, snow and ice are a good, healthy way to be outdoors and be stupid at the same time. And there's nothing wrong with that type of stupidity. Nothing wrong with that type of stupidity, that's for sure. I'm a fan of it. Complete fan.
Some advanced stupidity.
Oh, totally. Absolutely it is. But you know what? When you get the power of the outdoors and the fresh air, and, you know, nothing hurts in fresh air. Everybody knows that.
Right, of course. Nothing hurts at all.
Exactly. So you just say screw it and do it. That's the way it is.
Screw it and do it. I like that.
Exactly.
I have to remember that one. That's
a good Canadian
Davism.
Way. That's a total Davism right there. Total Davism. But good for them. I hope they had a good time.
This just in from the UK is Eclipse 2019. Super blood wolf moon conspiracy theorists say could end the world. Conspiracy theorists have long suggested that the rare occurrence could bring about the apocalypse, and they are predicting the same tonight. Obviously, this is a couple days old. Conspiracy theorists have said tonight's super rare blood wolf moon could start the end of the world. The rare celestial occurrence, which won't happen for another 18 years, will see the moon turn the shade of red in the early hours of Monday morning. But as well as making for an unusual spectacle, others have suggested that the phenomenon could be a sign of the apocalypse. Evangelical preacher Paul Bagley from the West Lafayette, Indiana, told The Express, there's a remote possibility of the world ending on January 22nd. During an online sermon, the preacher said, obviously these Apocalyptic signs in the heavens are pointing to a catastrophic event that is just on the horizon. I hate to break it to him, but the world didn't end. I'm still here doing the news. But it almost caused the world.
Go ahead.
Well, hang on. It almost caused the world to end for a couple in Florida. Are you ready?
Okay. Hold on. I got to stretch here for this one because it's Monday. Oh, there we go. Let me have it.
Florida man, woman run over by patrol car while lying in the road watching the eclipse. West Palm Beach, Florida. The super blood wolf moon was cool to look at, but looking at it while lying on a road landed a Florida man and woman in the hospital Sunday night. The unidentified pair were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, according to the Palm Beach Post. Police described them as 24 years old and said they were alert and talking with officers at the hospital. An officer patrolling the Epoxy Wilderness Trail at 11:30 Sunday night ran over the two people with his 2018 Ford Explorer. The officer has reportedly been placed on leave. The park was closed for the day, and police said the only way in was through a locked gate. Police believe they were in the area because it was dark and to get a better view of the lunar eclipse. Authorities said they had a camera, which reinforces the theory about why they were in the closed park so late. So lay down, watch the moon eclipse, get run over by the police.
That's always nice. I had a great view of it last night on my patio because my patio faces east, and my neighbor has these trees that just kind of framed it. I wish I would have had a good camera last night because I could have got some power shots of that. It was pretty cool. And you know what? It was my son's first eclipse that he was able to see. And we kept him up. Usually he goes to bed around 8 o'clock, and we kept him up a little bit later just so he could see it, and what an experience for him. I've got a funny story, speaking of my son today. Okay. And eventually this will come out on his wedding day. Got a call from school today. His principal says, "We have a little problem." I said, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "Well, let's just say your son was excavating and got a major nosebleed from it today." So here my son was sitting in kindergarten, picking his nose, and the next thing you know, he's up in the medical room because he picked too far, and, well, I guess he didn't find gold, but he found a leaky vein that I had to go bring a change of clothes at school today. Because he bled all over himself. Yeah. So for all you nose pickers out there, for all you nose picking kids out there, don't pick too hard. Let your nose go on strike, but don't pick it. We got time for one more.
Okay, now this one happened a couple of years ago, but I couldn't help myself when I read it. A homeless man reported a dead body by carrying the skull into a Florida Publix and using it as a puppet. Shoppers at a Publix in Sebastian, Florida called 911 Tuesday afternoon after spotting a homeless man carrying around an actual human skull. He was using it as a puppet, said witness Nick Picorio to WPBF. It smelled like death. According to Indian River County Sheriff's Office, the unidentified homeless man who was living in the woods came across the street from the grocery store, found the human remains in a secluded area away from the homeless camps, and then decided to carry the skull into Publix to report the body. The sheriff's spokesman, Thomas Rulin, told WPBF he had put the skull on top of a trash can over there because he wanted to tell somebody to call the sheriff's office. Once sheriff's deputies arrived, the homeless man led them to the body, which has not been identified. At this point, the investigators have yet to determine the cause of death.
Oh, that's
so
scary.
He wanted to report a dead body, so he carried the head into a grocery store and then used it as a puppet. You gotta love that. That's a Florida story right there.
How about just leaving it where it is? Call the police and have them come out. What's wrong with that?
That's not fun. Well, it's not just that he took the head, it's that he was actually using it as a puppet. He put his hand in it, and he was using it to move the mouth.
Either way.
Now you see why. It happened in 2015, but I was like, this may be 3.5 years old, but I got to go for this one. This is just too rare.
Well, on that note, let's get to the thought of the Dave.
Let's do it.
Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we post a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. Why do you believe or not believe in magic? Got some interesting responses today, Olaf. You ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, let's start with David. He goes, I don't believe in Harry Potter-style magic, but I do believe in synchronicity and psychic phenomena. The why of my belief would take longer to answer. Kelly, I don't believe because all of the magic known back in the days was later found to be unknown chemical technology or just to be a flat-out fraudulent. Magic, in my opinion, this day should be taken as nothing more than for entertainment purposes. Go to Vegas and have a fun time with it. Michael, lack of demonstrable causative mechanisms. Too many syllables for old Davy there this late in the show. Zuger, illusionary magic, as sleight of hand as an art form, is real. Magic as the BS mentality, mentally unstable people trying and fooling stupid people to make them. Chris, you got to have better English here, man. Hexby magic users, that's how he ends it. William, not a believer in magic. Debbie, white magic, black magic, I know it does exist. Psychics, telekinesis, levitation, teleportation, I've witnessed all, so yes, I do believe in fairies too. I believe in the fairies. Nikki, when my 7-year-old self heard about the Findhorn fairies, if there are fairies, then there must be a god. All magic operates somewhere around that spectrum. Gabe, I was gifted a kind of magic at an early age and have had dark magic attacks on me more than a few times. Reverend Keith, I believe in magic in a young girl's heart, how the music can free her whenever it starts. Actually, I do, but the devil is in the details of what we are calling magic. Josh, believe in all forms. I've seen things that could be only explained by magic. Marianne, I believe on the unexplained that can be called magic. Renee, my brother is an illusionist, so I know there is not any real magic. However, I suppose, as Marianne above me has said, the unexplained, such as poltergeist activity, hauntings, cryptids, and all that stuff could be considered magical. And that's where it left. Sylvia, because I could not live without it. Well, how do you know? Allison, magic is a matter of perception. Lots of things were considered magic until they were scientifically proven. Bobby, down in Australia, magic to me is just our potential, forgotten or not yet reached. Interesting theory there, Olaf.
Very.
Carl, I was 16 years old when the Lovin' Spoonful released this song. Do you believe in magic lovin'? That fact that I'm posting this proves there is magic. Thanks, Carl. Coral, as a young adult, I believed in magic. Now I believe in coincidence. Gail, I believe in magic in the realm of imagination and fantasy. We could go there any time. As for outside my overdrive imagination, not so much. JJ, yes, because I've experienced and felt, seen, and been taught. Adnome, magic was a science back in the day, but you put your mind towards things that are impossible and realize everything is possible. And the fact that gnomes float when they fart. Thanks, Adnome. Appreciate that. Cindy.
I did not know that.
No, me either. Cindy.
I learned something new tonight.
Magic comes in many forms, but true magic is when you look at your born child. She actually put burn child. I'll correct that to born child and say, how did I make this perfect in every way? Now that's magic. Uncle Dale. I believe in the supernatural world and that people can do business with the powers and authorities that dwell there. So I believe it's supernatural phenomena that is due to the direct action of supernatural entities. That is my belief, not my empirical analysis. I have no belief whether or not people can use their own power or that of power or of people to do magic. No idea. Final word comes from Joe. Poof. You're a frog. And just like that, that's the thought of the day. Olav, where can people find Paranoia Magazine?
ParanoiaMagazine.com. New podcast coming soon. I'm also starting a project I call The Paranoid Traveler. It should be pretty cool. And I had no idea that gnomes can levitate by farting. That was wow.
Me either. That's a good one. We want to say thank you to... Yeah, we want to say thank you to Captain Shirk for keeping the Newswire going. The SOR Newswire can be found at spacedoutradio.com by clicking the News tab. Special thanks to Dr. Dean Radin for coming on to talk about magic, telepathy, and so much more tonight. Tomorrow night on the program, let's get into monsters, shall we? Linda Godfrey will be with us at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to all of you listening in your cars, at work, at home, wherever you may be. Special thanks to everybody for your questions in your chat room. Those playing along on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Thanks for a great night. Thanks for being here, doing your part to help spread the word, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night.